Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ presented by Geico. We have been waiting for this moment, and it has arrived. Pete Prisco's top 100 list is out. He prefaced the article with the words, "Before you get worked up about my list, which you will, try to put your own together. It isn't so easy." So we already know there's going to be some questions where these top players have landed, and those questions will now be answered. Joining us now, the man himself, Pete Prisco. We also have our NFL analyst to give his take and maybe a little feedback for Pete. First of all, this is going to be fun. All right, so Pete, the process in general, it takes days to complete and months.
It takes a long time.
I'm envisioning a dark, cold room with no furniture and like little pieces of white paper with everyone's name on it, and you are just moving pieces of paper around like almost a wedding. You know, like where you're going to sit for.
Like if you were an organized person,
yes.
Like you yourself, right?
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
But tell us, how do you do
believe me, it's close. It's just not that exact. I'm not that organized.
Okay.
It's a process of watching all the tape, going back, talking to guys in the league, running things by them to see if they disagree or agree with me. If they disagree with me, they might jar my memory. I'll go back and watch some more. And I put it all together. It's not about what you did last year. It's kind of in between. Where are you now going forward? That's why there's some speculative on this moving forward. And, you know, it's hard to evaluate guys who are injured. Like, for example, Darius Leonard. When he's on the field, great player. But he wasn't on the field last year. He still got some concerns, or he was on the field very limited. He's got some concerns about his back. So where do you place him? So those are the tough things to try and figure out where guys slot in.
So is it like a projection of what somebody could potentially be going into the season?
Because it's where you are right now. I mean, yeah, you got because there's guys that you know this. You've been around the league long enough. There's a guy who's in his first year, might have had a pretty good first year, and then he takes off in his second year, and he might not be in this top 100, but he will be next year.
Okay.
And we have a couple guys that did take off, recently, so we're going to talk that through. But in the article, you said putting together the list is a real challenge. There's so many talented players, and really after the stars, it's tough to separate the market. But it seems like the top 25 are pretty easy. And at number 1, you have Patrick Mahomes. Was that just a no-brainer for
That
you?
was the easiest pick of all of them. I think that's a slam dunk. He wasn't number 1 last year. Aaron Donald was. But Patrick Mahomes is number 1 back in the spot where he was 2 years ago. So, yeah, that was easy. The quarterbacks 1, 2, 3 for me was actually easy. I had a hard time, though, where I would put 2 and 3 between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow.
I'm glad you said that.
Well, I mean,
second.
Of course, the Jets guy here is going to knock the Bills quarterback, so I get it. I understand that. But Patrick Mahomes, number 1, was actually it was the easiest pick.
So you like that move?
Of course. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is the number 1 player. The guy that I thought should have been number 2, Joe Burrow, even came out and said that this week, that without a doubt, Patrick Mahomes is the number 1 guy. Now, his receiver, Jamar Chase made headlines saying, Pat who? Which I think that's going to be a little fuel to the fire in the offseason, because you always, as a player, you try to decipher what you can use in the offseason to give you that little bit of edge, especially the Kansas City Chiefs. They have gone to the Super Bowl, I think, 2 out of the last 3 years. Anything that can give you a little chip on your shoulder, he's going to use that. But I had an issue with you putting Josh Allen above Joe Burrow, because if you look at it, Joe Burrow, 2 years in a row, AFC Championship game, went to the Super Bowl, dismantled the Buffalo Bills up in Buffalo this year in Josh Allen's backyard. And then Josh Allen also led the league in turnovers this year. I believe 14 interceptions, 5 fumbles. So it's hard for me to put a guy at number 2 that led the league in turnovers, because we know this, Pete. When you turn the ball over, it's hard to win games. It's already hard to win in the NFL, but when you turn the football over, you make it that much easier for the opponent to win games. So Josh Allen, of course, what he does, he's very explosive. I believe over 700 yards rushing, over 4,400 yards passing, 35 touchdown passes. But Joe Burrow had almost the same exact numbers, less interceptions.
Not rushing numbers.
Not rushing. But as far as having that it factor, as far as in the playoffs, how can you put Josh Allen in front of Joe Burrow?
Because I think Josh Allen's better. I think he's a better quarterback.
But we've seen in the playoffs.
Here's what happened. Look, teams, there's a lot of great quarterbacks who didn't win in the playoffs. I mean, Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl and might be the best quarterback who ever played. It takes a team to win. And I think Buffalo had all kinds of issues last year. I think defensively, that's why they have a new defensive coordinator. Sean McDermott's going to call the plays. They're going to be better all the way around. They had the Kincaid kid as a slot receiver, will help take the pressure off the passing game. They asked Allen to do too much. Yeah. And so, look, it was close. It's really close between the two of them. You're being nitpicky. He's taking a shot at the Bills. That's what he's doing.
I just feel like a guy that who's so young, only 3 years, has gone to 2 AFC Championship games. I don't know how you not put him in front of Josh Allen. When these guys met head-to-head in the playoffs, right, this is when you're supposed to elevate your team. Joe Burrow did that in the snow game in Buffalo. Josh Allen didn't.
Neither one of them played great in that game.
1, 2, and 3, a little difficult there between that 2 and that 3 spot, but we're going to move on to number 17 now on your list, and it's Davante Adams. Now, he proved he can play at a high level without Aaron Rodgers, the 4th receiver listed this year. Last year, I believe he was the 2nd receiver on the list, so why did he fall a little bit in your graces?
Well, I think Justin Jefferson has established himself as the best receiver in the league. I don't think we'll argue that. I think what Tyreek Hill did last year was phenomenal. He proved to people, hey, look, I can go to another offense and still put up big numbers. I mean, he pushed for 2,000 yards last year. He's talking about getting it this year. And then I had Jamar Chase ahead of Davante Adams, but barely. I think when you look at it, look, Adams had a good year last year. Chase was banged up a little bit, missed time. His numbers weren't as good, but he still had another big year. And I think when you look at it from that standpoint, that's why I put Chase ahead of him.
My thing is Davante Adams, and you're right. I would say Justin Jefferson probably has sublet him as the number 1 receiver. Kind of said it in the beginning of last year, right? Davante's still the number 1 guy, but I'm coming for him. And I think he came for him this year, went over 1,800 yards. But you talked about it, Pete. This guy went to the Las Vegas Raiders, didn't have Aaron Rodgers. Everybody had question marks. Will Davante Adams put up the numbers? 1,400 yards. We were talking about this upstairs, Pete. He had his highest average per catch this year with over 15 yards per catch. He was the only guy on the outside. Darren Waller missed a lot of the season. Hunter Renfrow
So he got a lot of the action.
Yeah, but he also was double-teamed every play, and he still found ways to get open. And then, let's not forget, towards the end of the season, he had to play with Jarrett Stidham. He wasn't playing with Derek Carr the entire year, where Jamar Chase gets to play with Joe Burrow.
He also has T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd on that team, too.
So that helps him get open. When you're the only guy on the outside,
helps him not get as many catches, too.
You're getting all the coverage sitting your way, though.
So you would have it Jefferson and then Adams?
For sure.
You would have Adams ahead of Tyreek Hill.
In front of Tyreek Hill.
Me. Tyreek Hill.
I believe he's a better, more complete receiver.
But he doesn't have that speed, though.
I
can't teach speed. You can't teach
what Davante does in his route running, though, either.
I take Tyreek.
All right, hang on, you two. We got much more to come on Pete Prisco's top 100 list. We were just talking about Adams there. He was the 2nd receiver on last year's list, only behind Cooper Kupp, who didn't even crack the top 25 this year as we take a look at some of the other numbers, singling out some of the players from 21 to 30. Remember, you can find this whole list of Pete Prisco's top 100 NFL players on CBSSports.com. It is live now. Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, presented by Geico. We're in the midst of breaking down Pete Prisco's top 100 list, looking at his top 100 quarterbacks, or the ones that actually broke into that list. We just talked about some of the players cracking the top 20. This is where things get to be a little bit tougher, according to Pete. He said it's difficult to separate some of the guys who land from 20 to 45-ish. And of course, where to put all these QBs? Well, we're going to answer some of those questions now as we welcome back Pete Prisco. Lige Duzabal breaking down Pete's top 100 list. We just went through some of those top players in the league, moving on to that next tier of talent and where to find players like Trevor Lawrence and Jalen Hurts. Now, I just want to know, you have the Chargers' Justin Herbert at 22, but what made you move around these players? You have Lawrence 8 spots above Jalen Hurts. So how did you figure that one out?
Well, I'll start with Herbert. Herbert was playing with handcuffs last year because the offensive coordinator was so bad they wouldn't allow him to throw the ball down the field. And one thing about that Chargers team, they're not very fast on the outside, but I think this new system will be better for him. He will get the ball down the field. His numbers will go up. As for Trevor Lawrence, I think he's going to have a special season. And reason being, schedule's favorable. The division has, you'll definitely have 4 games against rookie quarterbacks. You might have 5 or 6 if Will Levis can somehow get on the field. You play the NFC South, which is not a good division. You'll have another rookie quarterback in Bryce Young and Desmond Ridder. So the competition isn't going to be great, and I think he's going to put up monster numbers. I'm bullish on Calvin Ridley. I think he's going to add a different dimension to that offense with his speed. They'll make Kirk better in the middle of the field, make Jones better on the outside. I think Lawrence will be in the MVP conversation.
I'm not against that. I love that you had Herbert above both of them, and I agree with you. As far as the arm talent, this guy can make every throw on the field, and he was handcuffed last year. I think Guyton, they got to use him a little bit more as a speed guy down. He's the only guy that can really get down the field for them. I did have an issue with you having Jalen Hurts 8 spots behind Trevor Lawrence, and I know you always talk about me being a Jet, but it seems like you're being a homer with Jacksonville. I mean, Jalen Hurts was number 2 in the MVP category. To me, Pete, and I hope you would agree with this, He was the best player on the field during the Super Bowl. I would think you would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
So
the best.
for a guy that had 22 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, and you brought up Josh Allen earlier, right? What he does with his legs. This guy had 13 rushing touchdowns and over 760 rushing yards. So you're talking about what he can hurt you with, not just with his arm and his accuracy. And people had questions about that this year, right? Would he be able to be accurate throwing the ball down the field? He proved that he could do that. We knew what he could do as a runner, but how could you place him 8 spots behind Trevor Lawrence?
Because I think Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback and will be a better quarterback this year. If you ask every GM in the league, not named Howie Roseman, who they would rather have on their team, they would take Trevor Lawrence. And you would too. If you were picking a team to start the team right now, you would take Jalen Hurts over Trevor Lawrence?
After what I saw from Jalen Hurts last year, for
well.
sure. And again, we've only seen it 1 year from Trevor Lawrence. Now, he was handcuffed his first year.
How many years have we seen it from Jalen Hurts?
We've seen it, I would say, 1.5 at least.
Well, I mean,
because I remember I saw it on your notes. You were talking about how Trevor Lawrence played the back half of the season.
14-2.
He was struggling in the beginning of the year, right? And he started coming along. So now with Jalen Hurts, third year in the system, I think you're going to see him take.
You got to remember
another
this
level.
too. The Urban Meyer hangover
I
just ruins guys.
I give you that. Like I said, 1 year with Trevor Lawrence, and that's why I have an issue because we've only seen it for 1 year from Trevor Lawrence. And again, Doug Peterson is a hell of a coach. I think he will take another step. It's just hard for me to put a guy that was number 2 in the MVP race, 8 spots below another guy who, let's not forget, had 4 interceptions in that playoff game. And to your point, if it wasn't for the Chargers offensive coordinator, they would have been knocked out in that first round.
He also threw 4 touchdown passes.
He did in the second half. He bounced back great. He bounced back great, for sure.
We also need to remember this is projections
Correct.
moving forward along with what they've done in the past. And we're going to fly all the way down the list now where Bears quarterback Justin Fields lands as your last QB cracking the top 100 list at 78. Explain your reasoning there, Pete.
Well, we saw what he could do with his legs last year. And here's the amazing thing about him. As good as he is with his legs, he was sacked 55 times last year. The offensive line was awful. Well, they've improved the offensive line. They're going to be better up front. They got Darnell Wright. They signed Nate Davis. They're going to be much better on the offensive line. They add DJ Moore to the passing game. When you look at this team, they're going to be better to be able to throw the football. Everybody loves his rushing ability. I don't. I think he's going to improve as a pocket passer. He's still going to run the ball. He's going to cut down that number of rushes. I think he was 160 rushes last year. It's got to get down in the 80s. He'll still put up rushing numbers, but he's going to be much better throwing the football this year.
Yeah, I'm one of the few people that's a big Justin Fields fan, right? And the thing is, I thought Luke Getsy was really trying to sabotage him in the beginning of the year last year, right? Didn't do a lot of the things he was comfortable doing. I think it was around that Minnesota game, that New England game, where he started getting his legs involved. He felt more comfortable throwing on the run, throwing from in the pocket. You talked about it. The offensive line was bad. I mean, we love Braxton Jones at left tackle. Adding Darnell Wright, you talked about Nate Davis. It'll give him some security inside. And now he has a true number 1 receiver on the outside in DJ Moore. I still think it's a little high just because I know you're projecting what he could be. I just think he was too inconsistent throwing the ball last year. Look at a guy like Kirk Cousins. I know a lot of people aren't fans of Kirk Cousins, but 7 out of the last 8 years, he's thrown for over 4,000 yards. I mean, last year I think he had 29 touchdowns and 12 interceptions or 14 interceptions. So this guy puts it up. He puts up a lot of yardage, right? And he can throw from in the pocket. The thing about Kirk Cousins, the questions have always been, can he win the big game? Right?
Big moment.
But as far as the regular season, there's few quarterbacks that play as well as him during the regular season. So I think he deserves maybe to be in the top 100. I understand what you're saying with Justin Fields. I like his trajectory. I just think I have to see it a little bit more to put him in the top 100.
There were guys, Dak Prescott, another quarterback that was in and came back out again. I could have put him back in. So it was tough at the bottom. That group of quarterbacks, it was tough to place those guys.
We talked about most of the quarterbacks on your list. Aaron Rodgers also at number 29, Lamar Jackson at 35. We might get into those two in just a moment, but let's take a look at a player who's protecting those QBs, and that's Laramie Tunsil of the Houston Texans, tackle one of the best in the league. Pete, he just cracked that top 50.
And he was outstanding last year. And remember all the hype when he came in the league, the gas mask and everything, and what was he going to be? Would he be committed to it? And then they traded him for a bunch of picks, the Dolphins did, and he ended up going to Houston. And I'll tell you what, he is a big piece of what they're going to do at left tackle. If you have C.J. Stroud playing quarterback, you have to protect his blind side. I think Tunsil's big for them this year, and that offensive line is going to be much better. That's why I put him at 50.
But why didn't you put him higher? I mean, you had Andrew Thomas at 24.
Andrew Thomas was better than him last year.
Are you serious?
He was.
You know what, Jenny? And I'm glad you brought this up, Pete. When I look at offensive tackles and defensive linemen, I play defensive linemen in the league. I always like to see best on best. Go to that November game, Thanksgiving versus Michael Parsons. Andrew Thomas was in a blender. Now go watch the game versus Laramie Tunsil and Michael Parsons. Michael Parsons didn't get close to the
Yeah,
quarterback.
but you can do that one game.
I'm just saying, you always like to go best of best.
I do.
If you look over the whole completion of the season, Laremy Tunsil gave up 1 sack. Andrew Thomas gave up 3. I believe he only gave up 17 quarterback hits, where Andrew Thomas gave up like 21 or 22. Now, Andrew Thomas, as far as the trajectory, right? Because a lot of people thought he's going to be a bust after his rookie year, but he played great football last year. I mean, I believe he was an All-Pro last year. He was really good at left tackle, but I think Laremy Tunsil is just a better overall player right now than Andrew Thomas.
Yeah, I think going into this season, I think Thomas will be better.
You think so?
I do.
You talked about it, right? The AFC South and the NFC East. He plays better pass rushers in the NFC East than the AFC South. So, honestly, I think Laremy Tunsil is going to continue to be one of the best offensive tackles. Honestly, after Trent Williams, I think he's the best left tackle in football.
Yeah, I don't. I think Thomas is.
DJ, I want
We're
your
going to
top
agree to
100
disagree
list.
on that. I'm going to have to come up with my top 100.
I want to
Try it. It's harder than you think.
I know it's hard. I know it's
hard.
not easy.
It's hard.
All right, next up I want to talk about Josh Jacobs, led the NFL in both rushing and yards from scrimmage last season. A little bit of a contract dispute going on with the Raiders right now. He said he's taking a stand for future backs.
Good luck with that.
It's going to be tough.
Someone's got to do it, right? Well, he's at number 52 on your list, and pretty impressive. He had a slow start, but really came into his own at the end.
Again, he's one of those guys, we have to see it again.
Yeah.
We had a great year. We have to see it again. And look, I give him credit for what he did last year. And the Raiders didn't think he could do it. We didn't think he could do it. And he went out and did it. So I give him kudos for that. I think this is a good spot. But again, as far as the contract, not going to happen. Teams aren't going to give running backs second contracts that are going to be mega deals. So he's going to play on the tag again and go do what he can do. But I think he's a good back. I don't think he's a great back.
And this is the thing, right? And we talked about this in the preseason, because I don't know if you remember this, Pete. He was playing in the Hall of Fame game, and you usually don't put your frontline guys in the Hall of Fame game. I mean, history has shown that field is not always up to par. I remember one year when Green Bay played it, they canceled the game because the field was bad. This is how you know what Josh McDaniel, to your point, thought about him going into the season. And I thought it was egregious because he was a Pro Bowler before that, and I know you said we have to see him do it again, but 3 out of his 4 years, he's won over 1,000 yards.
1,000 yards, though, isn't a great season.
Well, I mean, consistency is key. I mean,
but it's not a great season anymore. If you average, 670 yards a game, you get 1,000.
But, I mean, it's consistent. Not a lot of people are doing that game in and game out. He went nuclear this past year.
Yes.
He went over 1,600 yards. I believe he was the only person in the NFL that went over 2,000 all-purpose yards. So I think he showed the Raiders what his value is to the team. And imagine what the Raiders would have been if Josh Jacobs wasn't on that team. I mean, the Seattle game, he single-handedly won that game for them.
He had a good season. Nobody's questioning that.
I thought he should have been a little bit higher on your list because his ability to catch the ball in the backfield, and he runs behind the pads. A lot of people tend to forget he wasn't the featured guy at Alabama, so he doesn't have the wear and tear like a lot of these other running backs have from Alabama. So he's still a pretty young guy. He showed that he could carry the load last year because I want to say he had more carries than anybody in the NFL last year, and he never missed any time.
What position does he play?
Plays running back.
That's why he's down lower than you think.
So you're one of those people that have a gripe against the running back
I've been
position.
saying it for decades. I was ahead of the curve on that
Bring
one.
the running backs back. Show them love.
So 1,000 yards is just nothing to you anymore. What's the
Think about
standard?
it. Think about it. Get 1,500.
Okay. All right, fair
There was
enough.
only 3 guys in the league that got that last year.
Get 1,500. Then we'll talk. He did it, so.
He definitely did it.
I spent a lot of time this morning going through your list and counting which team had the most players on it, and it turned out to be the Philadelphia Eagles. 9 players making the cut of the top 100. Now, even though the first player doesn't crack the list until Lane Johnson at 18, what does this say about the state of the Eagles?
They're loaded. They're loaded, and they, if they don't get victimized by the Super Bowl hangover, and we've seen that play out, everybody says it doesn't happen, but it can play out. Believe me, it's tough to get back, particularly when you lose. They're going to be right there again. I mean, look at these guys. I mean, the 2 tackles are fantastic together. Mailata and Johnson are both really good. The wide receiver, Devontae Smith, doesn't get the due he deserves. He caught more balls than any receiver in Eagles history last year, including A.J. Brown. And then Dickerson's on the rise as a left guard. Slay was 96. I don't think Slay played as well as his reputation last year. Bradbury could have been on this list as well.
Probably should have been on
So
the
both of them were in consideration at one point. This team is loaded. Now they have questions. The middle of the defense has to be better. Will Jordan Davis be good? Nakobe Dean's going to step in and play live. So they have some questions, but that team is loaded.
Yeah, they are loaded. And to your point, I don't think it'll be a hangover just because of the leadership factor of Jalen Hurts. I mean, we saw this guy. Nothing phases this guy. And you could tell that he was clearly pissed off that they lost that game. He was hoping for an opportunity one more time to put the offense back out there to win the game. And he unfortunately wasn't able to do that. So I think with the leadership they have, you talked about guys that have been there forever, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey. I feel like they've been there for 20 years, right? Got Jordan Mailata coming up. I think he's going to be one of the best left tackles in football this year. He's been banged up here and there. I think he'll be 100% healthy this year. Leonard Dickerson, I like that you put him on the list. I think a lot of people don't talk about him because of Kelsey and also Lane Johnson on the offensive line. But this guy gets after you in the run game. He's a really good pass protector also at guard. It has the ability to potentially maybe even slide in at center. I know they took Cam Jurgens a few years ago, but Dickerson has that ability to slide into center as well. I think Hassan Reddick actually should have been a little bit higher on your list for what he's able to do, not just pass rushing, but his ability to play the run on the edge at the sand position and also drop in coverage. But there's no doubt in my mind that they should have had the most players on the list.
Here's the thing, though. We talk about, there's guys, Kelsey and Johnson have been around for a while. They understand what it takes to win these games. But now you're the hunted. And a lot of these guys haven't been the hunted before. And you got to learn how to handle being the hunted.
They have a lot of talent on that team.
Big time.
So we'll see how that one goes. It's time now for our Geico 15. Going to put 15 seconds on the clock. Lige, look into the camera right there. I want to hear your biggest snubs when it comes to Prisco's top 100 list.
Yeah, Justin Simmons, how did you not put him on the list? 6 interceptions last year, 20 in the last 4 years. I think Deron Payne should have also been on the list. Mike Evans, how many 1,000-yard receiving seasons does he need? And then Keenan Allen, that's why I wanted to ask, what was your thought process in making this? Is it a projection or what a player has done? Because before this last year, Keenan Allen was one of the best receivers in the league.
But he wasn't last year, and he won't be this year. I think he's slowing down, and he's not fast to begin with. That's never a good thing. Simmons was in the list, and I moved him in and out a couple times because I put Byard ahead of him.
I love Byard, too.
Yeah, so I put Byard ahead of him. That's why he got moved out. And Payne, I had a tough time with that one, but I had him in as one time, too, and moved him back down. Hey, he picked guys I had in at one point.
It's right on the list.
Yeah.
Right on the list. All right, this has been a lot of fun. I want to hear Lige's top 100 list going on next. Now, remember, you can find all of Pete's stuff coming up. But before we go, I want the one player that you had the most difficult time putting on your list.
Aaron Rodgers. Not putting him on the list, where I put him, because Aaron Rodgers is fantastic. But is he the same guy anymore? That's the question. I still have my reservations about it. We'll see. But I'm a big believer in Aaron Rodgers, more so than most people, so I had a hard time placing him.
All right, guys, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to go through and dissect that whole list.
You will. Everybody else
does.
does.
I know that's what we're going to do. And if you're looking for more NFL news and analysis, look no further than the Pick Six podcast. Our guys getting you up to speed each day in about 30 minutes with what's trending in the NFL world. Their latest pod, it's Katie Mox, Will Brinson, and Brady Quinn discussing the status of the running back position in the NFL. Subscribe where you listen to your favorite podcast or scan that QR code today.